So our next topic is how do we solve an absolute value equation? So how do we isolate x when we have that absolute value symbol? So what we're going to do is follow a few steps here. The very first thing, again, same as the square root function, we want to isolate our absolute value. So for square root, we isolated the square root. For this, we're going to isolate the absolute value. So let's take that step right now. We have 2 times the absolute value of x minus 6 plus 2 equals 8. So the first thing I'll do is subtract 2 on both sides, and that leaves me with 2 times the absolute value of x minus 6 is equal to 6. Then I'll divide both sides by 2 to have my absolute value on its own and equal to 3. Now, one thing to know is whenever we have our absolute value isolated, this constant term here has to be positive. Whoops. There we go. All right, so it has to be positive. In this case, it is, so we can solve. We have to eliminate our absolute value here. And because we know that if we have a negative number inside of the absolute value, it could give us a positive 3. Or we could also have a positive number, and it could give us a positive 3. So again, very similar to the square root function, we can actually end up with 2 different answers. Okay? So in order to eliminate the absolute value, I'm actually solving 2 different equations. I have x minus 6 equal to a positive 3, but I could also have that x minus 6 equal to a negative 3. Okay? So what will we do from there? We're going to solve for x. So over here we have x minus 6 equals positive 3. Add a 6 on both sides, and we end up with x equal to 9. Oops, I'm doing step 3. Anyway, and we have x plus 6 on both sides is equal to a positive 3. So I've actually done eliminating and solving at once. And what I'm actually going to use this little space at the bottom for here is just to do a double check. So what I want to do, I've got this solution set. My solution is x equal to 9 and x equal to 3. I want to double check those just to prove to myself that they are in fact both solutions. I'm going to substitute them both into my original equation. So I have 2 times by 9 minus 6 plus 2 equals 8. So if I've done everything correctly, I should have 2 things that are actually equal to each other. So let's check. 2 times 3 plus 2 equals 8. So this absolute value of 3 just becomes 3. 2 times 3 gives me 6 plus 2 equals 8. Whoops. So that works out. Let's check our other solution. So I have 2 times the absolute value of 3 minus 6 plus 2, let me erase this, equals 8. So that simplifies to 2 times the absolute value of a negative 3 plus 2. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. 2 times 3 gives me 6 again. So I end up with 8 equals 8, which is good. Check mark. So I know that my solution is correct. A few things to note here. There are 3 possible answers whenever we are solving our absolute value equation. The first one being that there are 2 solutions, like the example that we just did. We can also have one solution. It would correspond to the vertex of our function, or we could have no solution. And that's when we isolate and we end up with a negative. But it is very important for us to isolate because it's possible that a negative on the right, when the absolute value is not isolated, could become a positive once we remove all of the other terms around the absolute value. Let's look at one more example before the end of the video. I'm going to follow the same steps again. So I'm going to isolate my square root by adding an 18 on both sides. Okay, and then I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 3. So I've done my isolation of my absolute value. And what do I end up with? This constant term here is negative. So what does that mean? My solving here I can't do. I actually have to just write this. It's no solution. So whenever we isolate all of or we remove all the terms, and isolate our absolute value, if we end up with a negative, we end up having to say there is no solution.